what's the difference between Representative Jasmine Crockett and Jussie Smollett? He is the perpetrator of one of the largest race hustle hoaxes in American history, in my opinion. The only difference between the two are their body parts. DEI, in my opinion, will not move America forward as it relates to racism. Actually, it'll just move us backwards. DEI is nothing more than a money maker for the race pimps out there. And also, I can't stand DEI and CRT because it assumes that people with darker skin are morally superior to white people. Now, can black people be racist? The answer is absolutely yes, because it is God that judges man's heart. Hello, you're listening to the Carl Jackson Show, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Today, I want to talk to you about the DEI race hustle. We're going to play some video. I didn't talk about this earlier in the week, or at least I didn't do a podcast on it, so I want to do it right now on Representative Jasmine Crockett and this viral video, this outburst that she had in the House earlier this week when she talked about white men not being able to be oppressed. So we want to get into that. Also, Jussie Smollett, Juicy, as he's better known nowadays, thanks to Dave Chappelle. We'll play some video for you as it relates to that. And oldie, but goodie, his conviction was overturned. I hate that it was overturned, but I'll tell you why it makes sense, even though I wish it weren't overturned. And it has everything to do with the state attorney or DA or whatever she is in that Chicago area, Kim Foxx. Actually, the ire should be focused towards her, frankly, and Jussie Smollett, but definitely towards her. Just as much ire should be focused on Kim Foxx. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast, guys. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, our Rumble channel. That way you can make sure that nothing that I say is censored. Follow me on all things social media at The Carl Jackson Show. And please share the podcast with a friend, family member, or neighbor. I hope that you have an amazing Thanksgiving holiday. And I'm so glad that Trump won. I'm so thankful that we get an opportunity to take another crack at this big apple, and that is restoring the American dream. Today's show is brought to you by MyPillow.com. The story of MyPillow is a testament to faith and transformation. Mike Lindell, once battling addiction, a phenomenal story, by the way, found a new path when he embraced faith and began following Jesus. In gratitude, Mike is excited to share an exclusive offer with our listeners. Right now, the standard MyPillow is available for just $14.88. That's a savings that's too good to pass up, so don't do it. There's a limit, however, of 10 per customer since the price is so low. Don't wait to take advantage of this amazing deal right now. All you have to do is use the promo code Carl. Christmas is coming up fast. Make sure you place your orders. Mike believes that God gave him the idea for MyPillow in a dream, and it's designed with your comfort in mind. The pillow holds its shape and adapts perfectly to your unique sleep position, helping keep your neck aligned for the best night's sleep. And it also keeps you cool. That's something that I think they need to promote, because I love my MyPillow. Absolutely. So, and that's one of the things that I love about it, beyond keeping my neck aligned and all that great comfort. There's more, however. Take home a 4-piece kitchen set for only $25. Enjoy their new mattress topper starting at just $99.99, or pick up the luxurious MyPillow bed sheets starting at $49.98. Visit MyPillow.com or give them a call at 800-858-0263. Use promo code Carl to unlock huge discounts. Don't miss out. Order today. Okay, so a couple of videos that I want to play for you, and then I want to get into, there was a great column by Christopher Rufo of City Journal, also with the Manhattan Institute. You guys know him, entitled The DEI Cash Cow. I'm going to give you some of the numbers. If you wonder why transgenderism, if you wonder why DEI CRT has just exploded exponentially in the last several years, the federal government and their funding has a large part to do with that. For the sake of today's show, we will focus on DEI, but I know everybody's been wondering, like, what the heck? Like, everybody thought that, the trans issue just a few years ago was, I mean, yeah, you had some trans, but it wasn't like, one out of, two people. And all of a sudden, obviously I'm exaggerating, but you understand the point that I'm making. But here's a video that I want to play. This is cut number 2. Gabe, of Representative Jasmine Crockett, that went viral earlier this week. I'm going to debunk some of this nonsense, and then I'm going to give you just a little bit of Jasmine Crockett's history, because this is a chick that comes from money, even though she's trying to pretend as if she does not. This is a young Black woman that has been extremely successful in the United States. Let's go ahead and roll this video, por favor. Gabe, Representative Jasmine Crockett, cut number 2.
Is because you can then misuse words like oppression. There has been no oppression for the white man in this country. You tell me which white men were dragged out of their homes. You tell me which one of them got dragged all the way across an ocean and told that you are going to go and work. We are going to steal your wives. We are going to rape your wives. That didn't happen. That is oppression. We didn't ask to be here. We not the same migrants that y'all constantly come up against. We didn't run away from home. We were stolen. So yeah, we are going to sit here and be offended when you want to sit here and act like, and don't let it escape you that it is white men on this side of the aisle telling us, people of color on this side of the aisle, that y'all are the ones being oppressed, that y'all are the ones that are being harmed.
Okay, so that's Representative Jasmine Crockett. Now, someone should ask her the question. This is very important. I want you to hear me out. Someone should ask Representative Jasmine Crockett, where would she rather live? Would she rather live in the United States of America or elsewhere, someplace in Africa? Genuine question. Someone else should pose the question to her. You talk about this oppression by white men. Why do you belong to the party of oppressors? The party that created the KKK, the party that implemented Jim Crow laws across the South in the United States. Somebody needs to ask her that question. See, DEI, I want you to understand, DEI, CRT, and all of this stuff, these are money makers. The left have incentivized DEI just like they incentivize hatred, anger, all this kind of stuff, because it's a moneymaker for them. Like everything else, the left specializes in victimhood. And that's why you get representatives like Jasmine Crockett. Now, Jasmine Crockett, I believe that she really believes what she's saying. I believe that she's a useful idiot. And I don't think that she's an idiot per se, but I think she's a useful idiot for this cause. I also believe I saw Carol Swain put on Facebook, or not Facebook, I believe it was X. This chick doesn't belong in Congress. She's absolutely right, except that obviously her voters voted for her. So hopefully our mission as conservatives for the next couple to few years, especially while Trump is in, this isn't a time for us to sit back and to rest on our laurels. This is a time for us to educate to the best of our ability our audiences on the history of the Democrat Party, on left-wing principles, and all of that kind of nonsense. It's funny to me because I recently read some columns with the left going just mentally insane on how they lost this race with Kamala Harris against Trump. And I've read some columns from, I believe one was from Vox, and this guy had this whole plan. If Democrats would have done A, B, C, and D, he was making the argument that Kamala Harris lost because she tried to moderate. No, she lost because everyone knew that she wasn't a moderate, and she couldn't answer basic, simple questions, and she couldn't untangle herself from the Biden administration that has been a complete and utter disaster. Now, let me move on to Jussie Smollett. Now, Jussie Smollett, and we'll play some video clips for you. Actually, why don't we start there? Let's roll video clips number 3. I'll give my take on that, and video clip number 4. Now, guys, listen, let me just warn you, there is some language in these particular videos that I'm going to share. And I know some of you guys may be offended about that. I totally get it. I went ahead and made the decision to play the videos in their entirety. So I'm warning you right now, if you're listening to this podcast and you have any children in the car, you know what I'm saying? Listen to it in your earbuds, or listen to it when there's no children around, because Dave Chappelle is going to use some language, and then I'm going to use the guys that Jussie Smollett used to pull off one of the biggest race hoaxes, in my opinion, in all of American history, and they use some language. So I just want you to be prepared for that. So here we go. This is I want to show Dave Chappelle because I just think it's funny. And then we're going to talk about the DEI race hustle after we finish these videos, and how it's become a money-making machine. And that's why the left has been incentivized to spread this hatred in every institution imaginable. Video clip number 3, por favor, Gabe. Oh, my. Listen, I don't agree with Dave Chappelle's political views, but I got to tell you, he is one of the funniest and smartest comics out there. He really is. And that's why he's so successful. He says, I think even though I don't think he's a leftist. He's obviously a liberal if you've heard him speak for long enough, but he's able to hit issues kind of on both sides, both culturally and politically. And obviously he has frustrated the trans community with a lot of his comedy, but he's absolutely right. I think most everyone, except for probably liberals that wanted to believe that Jussie Smollett was telling the truth, knew that he was lying, knew that story made no sense whatsoever. And then you're going to have people go to that extreme to attack you in the middle of the night in freezing cold and not finish the job, kind of leave this. And I should have brought that video, the video with after he called the police and they met him back in his I don't know if it was an apartment townhome or whatever it was. And he had this makeshift noose around his neck. I mean, like, they happened to have all of this stuff on them in the middle of the night, bleach, a makeshift noose, and all of this and recognize Jussie Smollett in the middle of the night in the freezing cold in a blizzard. I mean, the story just didn't make sense. It didn't add up from the get-go. But Jussie Smollett, if you recall, or Jussie Smollett, as he's better known today, thanks to Dave Chappelle, this was a gentleman that wanted more money in his contract when he was on that show Empire. And so, and I never watched the show, I got to be honest with you, but I do remember the controversy. He wanted more money. And apparently he was up for a contract renewal. If I recall correctly, I may be wrong on that, but regardless, he wanted more money. And what better way to ask for more money if more eyes, if more people know who you are. So if your name explodes in media all of a sudden, like I never knew who he was, never even heard of his name until that story broke. So that's what it was about. It was about the hustle. Racism is a hustle. Racism in America is such a non-issue today that you have people like Jussie Smollett and the hoaxers out there literally profiting off of it, or trying to profit off of it. This one absolutely backfired. Now, just real quickly, let me speak to his conviction being overturned. Apparently, there was a technicality in his conviction. The technicality being Kim Foxx wanted to drop the case, even though she was corrupt and she was being, I can't recall who was in her ear, some of his family members or something like that. I don't recall the whole story, but you may recall early on that she wanted to drop the case against Jussie Smollett, but there was such public outcry once people realized that it was such a hoax. And then the chief of police in Chicago, a black man, was like, man, all this money we spent, he clearly lied, blah, blah, blah. We investigated this. And so just the media, right, turned against him when we knew this guy was lying. He still to this day hasn't admitted that he's lying, which tells me he hasn't learned anything about this, and he's a complete and utter narcissist. But the technicality is the prosecutor didn't want to file the case. I think someone did as a result of the media outcry. And so basically that's the technicality. The prosecutor intended to drop the case and not file charges. And that's the way that it works. If a prosecutor, regardless of how you feel, doesn't want to prosecute, you can't prosecute. And so it sounds like this may be legit. Doesn't mean that he's not guilty, because we all know that he's guilty of sin. It just means that Kim Foxx is absolutely corrupt, and she was corrupted by by Jussie Smollett's posse, and the left again live by a different standard. And all you have to do is turn to this trial of Daniel Penny in New York City, the subway hero that wrestled down Jordan Neely to protect people's lives on a subway train, and he's getting a completely different treatment. I mean, there was a legal alien or somebody that just did some like stabbing and all this kind of nonsense there recently. And another story I read, I don't want to mislead you here, but just another story that I read just the other day with some guy that literally attacked people or raped an illegal that raped some girl and got what do you call that, bail? I mean, it's insane. It's obvious that Alvin Bragg is persecuting Daniel Penny because he happens to be a white guy and he's racist. So people are tired of that. That, in part, I believe, is also why Kamala Harris lost the election. I think people were really done with DEI and CRT, and the left just doesn't seem to get it. Real quickly here, I want to play you the video. This is cut number 4. These are the white MAGA dudes that Jussie Smollett hired to attack him. They did a Fox News special. I just want to remind you of that. Cut number 4, please, Kate.
This is where we waited for Jussie to
look at those white MAGA
before
dudes.
we attacked them. So we got here with 10 minutes to spare, and we had to plan our escape route to survey the land. His building is actually right here, right above the stairs that we're going to attack him at. We made sure we got there at 2 a.m. sharp.
On the dot.
On the dot. We had no phones because he did not want us to bring any phones. He said, so we don't lose them. I don't know if that's really the reason, but you can deduce your own reason. So 2 a.m., he was nowhere to be found. He was not there. So we were like, damn, what do? We didn't have no way of contacting him. He had no way of contacting us. So we waited here for about, what, 4 minutes?
It was about 4
Roughly
minutes,
4 minutes.
but it felt like forever.
Because it was cold as balls. So I saw him out the corner of my eye, and I was like, okay, that's him. Let's go. Gotta go get this Empire fat. Yeah, that's him. That's him. Is that him?
That's that neck.
It's that neck.
Get that neck.
Oh, he's moving fast. Come on, let's get him.
Get that neck.
Let's get him. As we crossed the street, we said hey to get his attention.
Hey, Nick.
Hey! He turned around, looked at us, and that's when we started yelling the famous slurs he wanted us to yell. Hey!
Aren't you that Empire?
Hey, Empire fat Nick! It's MAGA country.
Yeah.
And then he said, what did you say to me? And then that's when I threw the first punch at him. I held the blow because I didn't want to hurt him, of course. So I made it look real, but I held it. Then we started tussling, moving around, and then I threw him to the ground. He wanted it to look like he fought back. That was very important for him because he said, hey, don't just beat my ass, make it look like I'm fighting back and whatnot. So we did that, and then I threw him to the ground. And after I threw him to the ground, he had no bruise. I wanted it to look more real. So then I threw him to the ground. After I threw him to the ground, I used my knuckle and gave him a noogie. So I went like this. Why did I do that? To give him a scar, to give him a mark, to make it look real, like he really did get his ass beat. After I did that, I fake kicked him. I don't know what he was doing. I wasn't paying attention.
That's where I came around with the bleach, the infamous bleach in the hot sauce bottle, poured it on his shirt. Then I finally put the rope around his face. I did not put it around his neck. I just placed it on his face, and that's when we took off.
I mean, absolutely hilarious. And then if you guys recall, I don't have time for them today, but there were interviews that were given to Jussie Smollett at the time where people just bought the story hook, line, and sinker. Mainstream media, or I'm not even sure that they bought it, but they wanted to, right? They wanted to prove that America is racist. I mean, there's racism in America. It's a big money maker. And that's not to say, this is one of the things that I can't stand as well. about DEI and CRT is when there actually is real racism that occurs, nobody takes it seriously because everything is racism. And if everything is racism, then nothing is racism, right? Because it's like the boy that cried wolf. Nobody believes anything. And the people that support DEI, CRT, they're actually doing more to hurt their cause than they are to help it. The people like Representative Jasmine Crockett, who frankly went to a Catholic school, grew up with money, and is now a U.S. congressman talking about oppression of white people while she's sitting there just as privileged, if you will. And I have no problem with it. But don't sit here and tell me you're a victim just because of the color of your skin. I remember back in the day when Barack Obama, I had just recently started my landscape business, probably a couple years before or whatever Barack Obama came on the scene, or at least not before he came on the scene because I knew about him, but before he decided to run as president. And I was listening to this station, this radio station here, and it's black hosts and stuff like that. And I would listen to it on occasion, some of their music or whatever in the morning to kind of get going. And but I listened to it specifically at this point in time because, it was Barack Obama was Jesus. And then they were talking about, now, mind you, this was a nationally syndicated radio show. They made tons of money. I looked at, the guy's net worth at the time. I can't remember, but multi-millionaire. And they were talking about racism and ending racism in America and all this kind of stuff. And they were older than me. Probably these people were probably at the time, probably about the age that, that I am now. And they were talking about ending racism and all this kind of stuff in America, how this will put an end to it, and how it's so hard for black people in America and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, I got a history. I screwed up. I got in trouble with the law and stuff like that. And here I am, moved from LA, moved to Florida. I started a business and I'm starting to do all right as a young cat that literally, messed up, made some bad choices in life, and so I'm listening to all this and I'm like, dude, I would listen to them sometimes and like, dude, I want to be there. How can I get to their status monetarily or even the jobs that they had? I was like, man, what a fun job to be able to go in and talk about music and talk about all these cultural stories or whatever and else and get paid for it. What a sweet gig. You know what I'm saying? And they were just talking about oppression, all this kind of nonsense. I literally called into the show and I told them I wasn't sure they would play me, but they ended up playing me just real quick before they went out to break. And I said, instead of talking about how America, is racist and how blacks can't get ahead because you're going to discourage young blacks to go out and work for theirs, why don't you guys tell us how you got to where you're at? See, it's a hustle. It's a hustle. People love. Now, they really believed it. All right. But people that were perpetrating this nonsense at the time, it was sad to me and it was heart wrenching. And I'm just like, man, we have overcome this crap, man. I lived the LA riots, the whole Rodney King stuff. And I felt like there was some racial tension and I saw it dissipate myself. Let me give you this DEI race hustle, this monetary. This is a thing. All right. So this is a column from Christopher Rufo from City Journal. I'll go through it real quick and we'll close this out. Here's the summary. He says there's an old adage in America. Every great cause begins as a movement and eventually degenerates into a racket. That's exactly what we saw with BLM. That's what we're witnessing with DEI. Obviously, the most fashionable cause today is diversity, equity, and inclusion. He says what might have begun as a social movement has now become a business, and not just in the U.S. According to McKinsey and Company, spending on DEI related efforts across the globe totaled $7.5 billion in 2020. If trends continue, that figure will exceed $15 billion, he said. So government contractors, listen to me. Government contractors, the people that we pay our tax money to, we work hard for, and they decide how to spend our money foolishly. So government contractors are raking in the dough. They are cashing in on DEI. He writes that it's hard to determine what amount of money the government is spending in Washington on DEI. But when he searched contracts and grants and other outlays that reference diversity, equity, and inclusion when it came to government contracts, in similar terms, what he found was that now more than $1 billion went out in federal contracts last year. So think about that. $1 billion now from the federal government in federal contracts when it comes to DEI. Now, let me just let me share with you the just rapid increase in federal spending that has occurred in just the last few years. In 2019, according to City Journal here, the federal government awarded $27 million. That's in 2019 in contracts with language related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So $27 million in 2019. That was during Trump's tenure. And obviously they had the deep state issue so that was happening. They had DEI language then. That's why I'm so excited. I got to be honest with you, for Doge. I hope that really does work out, help weed out not just the spending, but some of this nonsense, along with some of these cabinet picks that Trump has picked. But after the George Floyd lie, the George Floyd hoax, that's a hoax, folks. After the George Floyd, that guy didn't die. He wasn't murdered. He died of a drug overdose. The federal government and private contractors went all in on DEI, seeking to implement the Biden administration's, listen to this, whole of government equity agenda. So trip off of Biden's DEI executive order that basically created this demand, if you will, for DEI consulting to the federal government and even DEI experts within the federal government and outside of the federal government. So listen to this. In a series of executive orders beginning in January 2021, Biden unveiled his agenda. The White House directed each federal agency, quote, to implement or increase the availability of DEI training programs, close quote, create, quote, internal policies and procedures to support, close quote, employees transitioning, quote unquote, to another gender, submit annual DEI plans and reports to a White House steering committee, establish, quote, agency equity terms, close quote, and appoint a, quote, chief diversity officer, close quote, to oversee compliance. These directives, Christopher Rufo writes, created a sudden demand for DEI consultant in opening the floodgates for federal funding to private contractors who, again, were who offered their expertise, all right, or advice on diversity program management. So this is why it skyrocketed. This is why it boomed. This is why you get the Pete Booties that became the Department of Transportation Secretary. This is why you get the I don't even know the guy's name that dresses like a woman that's a head of Health and Human Services. And then you had that other guy, was it Sam Britton or whatever, that was going around, bald-headed guy dressing like a woman, going around to airports and stealing women's luggage. It was absolutely insane. That's why you get people like that and the topless trans dude on the White House lawn back in the day. You guys remember that? Exposed his fake breast to the world. Just chill on the White House lawn. It's just weird when I think about it. All right, so the large consulting firms advertise the adoption of DEI basically as a moral imperative. And that's what it is. See, when the left brings in what the left wants to do is try to remove God out of the picture. So they create their own gods. DEI is a god for the left because it makes them feel moral. It makes them feel virtuous. They could say, if we as Christians say, hey, man, this is a sin, or this lifestyle is a sin, then all of a sudden, the left, in order to counter that, will say, in order to feel moral about some of their bad choices, will say, no, you're the one that's in the wrong. And this is why you don't believe in A, B, C, and D. But they have no moral foundation. This is why these people are nuts. That's why they get all mad and angry and worked up. There's no moral authority outside of the word of God. Where does morality come from? You know, it doesn't. Morality isn't arbitrary. All right, so here's a couple of examples that happened when it came to spending on DEI. I believe it's called Deloitte, Deloitte, claimed to have spent 1.47 billion on quote unquote diverse suppliers. McKinsey from that McKinsey and Company group committed to doubling spending on such suppliers while investing 20 million in DEI research. Jeez, it almost makes you want to get in on the scam. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a lie, just like all of these foods knew it was a lie. But man, when you see money tossed around like that, it's tempting. You really have to have a moral foundation to not buy into this crap or not become corrupted by it. Deloitte published a report titled, quote, "The Equity Imperative," which encouraged quote, "business to take the lead in dismantling systemic racism, preferably with Deloitte's," listen to this, quote, "premier cross-enterprise DEI analytics tool." So once the government said, hey, we're willing to give you guys money over this DEI stuff, not only did this company all of a sudden discover systemic racism, but they created a tool to a DEI analytics tool. After Biden opened up these floodgates, all of these companies all of a sudden believed in DEI. Again, it was a moral necessity. McKinsey published studies that claim to have found economic benefits from diversity policies, and also claimed that narrowing the gender gap would add $12 trillion to the GDP. I don't even know how you figure that crap out. It's total nonsense. And then the consultant class cashed in as well. Why not be a consultant? You guys have seen, I haven't seen it yet. I've just heard plenty of people talking about it. I need to watch it. Matt Walsh's film, I Am Racist. I hear it's hilarious. But anyway, in early 2022, McKinsey partnered with another firm to present, quote, "a series of workshops," close quote, "that would, quote, equip federal leaders working across government with research-based insights to improve their," listen to this, "DEI work." There was a added for accessibility. So diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. All right. So Deloitte, seizing the opportunity presented to Biden's executive orders mandating DEI in the federal workplace, published a paper on the, quote, "government's equity imperative," presenting the firm's government equity activation model. Just cashing in. So McKinsey and Deloitte were just one of two or two of many consultancies that reaped financial rewards from Biden's executive order. And they secured millions of taxpayer dollars in DEI contracts. Just nonsense. So federal agencies hopped on board too with the DEI scam. Listen to this. The Treasury Department awarded $2.8 million to Accenture Federal Services for DEI, quote unquote, implementation. The Department of Health and Human Services, with the dude that dresses like a woman, gave a $2.9 million DEI contract to a company called Totem. The Department of Defense agreed to pay Tyler Federal $3.3 million for DEI database services, because why not tell all your warriors that they're racist? Number 4, the Agency for International Development allocated $6.2 million to SSG Advisors for DEIA buy-in, quote unquote. This is insane. He also writes, consider the $4.4 million agreement between the Department of Labor and Calco Consulting Group to, quote, deliver diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility training. And then for the Department of Job Corps program and initiate an initiative to help young people, quote, complete their high school education, and train them for meaningful careers and assist them with obtaining employment. The Department of Labor also gave millions of contracts to conform to their DEI morality. For example, a team of Calco DEI consultants went to Montgomery, Alabama to lead, listen to this, a 3-day immersive student-centered design training as part of a Job Corps plan to adapt DEIA principles at all of its centers. This is Biden working from the top down to keep America racist, but in a new way. You make blacks and minorities racist. You change the national feel of the country. you create this perpetual victimhood, like the Democrat Party needs. Democrats need perpetual poverty, and they need perpetual victimhood. And that's what Biden was giving them with this. And then people were just cashing in. All right, last few examples. NASA, the government awarded $2.4 million to LMI Consulting to incorporate, and I'm quoting, to incorporate and deeply ingrain diversity, inclusion, equity, and accessibility in the agency's, quote, culture and business. So screw the rockets. Let's make sure that we're spreading DEI up in this piece. LMI, which has, quote, assisted NASA in transforming its workforce, happily adapted its product to the new DEI ideology. It's amazing. The agency recognized the film's work, giving its, quote, Group Achievement Award to 7 LMI consultants, not for advancing space travel, mind you, but for, quote, developing innovative approaches and ways to use lessons learned when implementing DEI strategies, close quote. The Department of Homeland Security implemented the White House's DEI priorities as well. In September 2023, the department awarded $2.1 million to the Millennium Group International for, quote, DEI professional support services, a rolling contract that could reach $7.5 million by 2028. That contract, he writes, is part of the department's sophisticated diversity apparatus, which includes strategic plans, DEI workshops, and seminars and trainings on the brain, quote, listen to this, the brain science of inclusion, close quote. I am so glad Trump is in, and Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will be on this like stink on boo-boo. Instead of enforcing the law and protecting life and liberty, DHS has focused on, quote, unleashing the power of our shared human spirit through inclusive diversity. DEI does nothing to serve the national interest. All it's doing is dividing us. It should be dismantled in all federal agencies. It should be dismantled in our educational system. Guys, listen, we understand that America isn't perfect, but these people are completely lying when it comes to America. Perhaps Representative Jasmine Crockett doesn't know the true history of slavery. Perhaps she doesn't realize that slavery was universal. Perhaps she doesn't realize that 300,000 captives, or 4 to 6% of slaves, were brought to America. That means 96 to 94% were elsewhere. Most enslaved Africans went to Brazil, and they went to the Caribbean, by the way, where Kamala Harris's family owned slaves. Many African slaves were first seasoned and mentored. Did you know this? In the Caribbeans. And then they were brought to the Americans. So they were seasoned by blacks, and then they were brought to America. I mean, this is it's absolutely insane. And this nonsense. Listen, the Europeans that participated in the slave trade, it's not like they went to Africa, traveled to Africa on boats, went into a territory that they didn't know, and just grabbed these big butterfly nets to catch Negroes all over the place. Didn't happen like that. You had warring tribes on the continent of Africa, chieftains, whatever they were called, that would sell their slaves to Europeans. That's just a fact. So maybe we should be upset when we look at the history books at some of the African chiefs that sold blacks to Europeans. But and then Slavs, that's where the word slaves comes from. Everybody, every ethnic group has somehow, some way participated in slavery, in slave trading, or been slaves themselves. It's just the way of the world. Perhaps Representative Crockett will learn world history one day. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.